Welcome back. We're back. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Callie.
Welcome back to our podcast, everyone. We decided to keep going. We're on season 2, episode 1. Woo!
I'm excited.
And we started this a year ago, last week. It showed up on my Facebook.
That's exciting.
I know, right? And we started it because we were in a pandemic. And we thought we were chatting anyway. We'd make it a podcast, and we're still in a fucking pandemic.
Still going strong.
God damn it. So I know I visited you guys recently, you and Dylan, and he seemed to be doing okay keeping his mask on, and he's doing better than most people in the world. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's definitely still all about the masks, even though he has been vaccinated. And
of course he has.
I'm kind of like, well, he's like still going with it. So I'm good about that. I think it's still smart to wear it when you're out. He's back in his transition program. So, and he's back out in the community. So, even though they have an option where when they're in a classroom or inside that they have to wear it, but they can take it off when they're outside. But I requested that if he wants to wear it, like just have him wear it, except for
as he chimes in,
except for when he's eating. So yeah, he's been great about it. And he's funny because there's been a couple times when we take off in the car and he forgot his mask and he's like, oh, I'm off mask. Like, so we had to make a detour and come back. So I'm pretty proud of him on it. He was pretty funny when you came over because he was showing off and
he was
on all the stops because Miss Kelly was there. So.
He was. So we also have some exciting news. We are partnered with SitePro. And I am a huge fan of SitePro. They are a group that provide very quality CEU opportunities for BCBAs. I've done 3 webinars with them so far. I think all 3 live. Yeah. And they're very high quality. And they are going to post our podcast on their website so people can, BCBAs can listen while they're driving from place to place like they do, or while they're at their desk at home working and get CEUs for free.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great.
We're trying it out right now. We'll see how it goes. And so we'll post that in the notes of the episode. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about disseminating information about ABA, particularly as it relates to the new ethical codes that are coming out in January 2022. So for BCBAs, we have, it's called the Ethics Code for Behavior Analysts. As you all know, January 22. And it's been sort of reworked quite a bit. And I think both parents and BCBAs want to hear about it. And our first code word for our CEU is the word compassion, if people are listening for CEU. And it's broken up very differently. And I wanted to share some of it with you, Jen, and hear your perspective as a mom with Dylan. And one of the things I love is they talked about, they gave us 4 foundational core principles. I'm going to tell you what they are. And that as behavior analysts, we are supposed to focus on treatment that benefits others. Okay. And by others, it doesn't mean just Dylan, it means the whole family.
I love it already.
Yep. Treat others with compassion, hence our code word, dignity and respect.
Yeah. Hello.
Right.
Yep.
Behave with integrity, not shady, like I've seen happen.
Yep.
And ensure that we have competence as behavior analysts in the topic that we're talking about.
That's great.
So
I love all 4 of them.
I thought so. So I wanted to specifically talk about core principle number 2. And it's treat others with compassion, dignity, and respect. Right. And I'm going to start this off by saying, I've been a BCBA long enough I was doing behavior analyst before the board came out. I started doing this work in 1994, working in group homes in Massachusetts and overseeing group homes. And then I moved to California in 2002 and then became a BCBA in 2003, hence the 25 plus year career. And of that, I think we've determined I've known you and Dylan like 17 or 18 of those years, right? So when I started as behavior analyst, the ABA approach that I was initially trained on in Boston with my company was a discrete trial, right? And I vividly remember Dylan in his preschool classroom. And they had different tables, they had picture schedules, which was totally fine, but they had a lot of, didn't they have folders where he would like match a picture on Velcro? And there were some play components to it, but if you think back about his preschool, it was very discrete trial, like alone with an adult with singular types of response. Do I have that memory right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely very rigid and very task oriented and repetitive, I thought.
And I remember looking at it because that's when I was opening my practice, right? And I was very much about natural environment teaching, pairing children up to work together towards a common task, regardless of your ability, right? That you worked with other children. We used to do circle times and play games at preschool, cooperative building, learning tasks through art crafts where you work side by side. And not that my way was right or wrong. I was more of a natural environment person. And I'm curious if you can think back on that. I also remember it feeling very sterile in that classroom. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think that's been a big issue is like the whole, for me and with Dylan, like in the very beginning, both whether it's in school or just all the services he was having, it did seem like a little isolating where it was just like, one adult with Dylan as opposed to, I mean, I remember you always telling me a big thing was, that's why I like the social groups so much is because, I've always told that, children learn by imitation. And so if they are seeing their peers do something or we're trying to get them to imitate or react or participate, like how can you do that when you're just one-on-one with an adult? And I just remember at the time him getting really frustrated because a lot of the ABA was like repetitive of like say your full name like 10 times and get an M&M, and after
Mass trial. He hated mass trial.
Yeah, any of that, like by halfway through, I could tell in his head, he's like, I've said this now like multiple times, like, leave me alone, And so, yeah, I think, granted, like Dylan's 21 and things have totally changed in a positive way, I think. And, for everybody going through this and learning whether you're a parent or a service provider. But yeah, it was definitely definitely a different world back then, I think. And I'm glad there are making a lot of changes.
Well, so my take on this is there are a lot of folks that have come out in the last couple years, including folks with autism, that talk against ABA, right? They don't like ABA. And having gone through that perspective, where I had children sit at a table. When I first started in the 90s, you sat at a table, and if you wouldn't sit, we made you sit. And we made you comply until, and it was very much, I'm the adult and I'm going to tell you what to do and you're going to follow, right? And I can remember thinking, there's got to be a better way to do this. This could be much more fun than it is. And the other thing that stands out for those that sort of are against ABA is the concept of we're trying to tell kids with autism not to stim. I vividly remember telling kids not to stim, hands down, hands down, hands down. And what we know is it's okay if they stim, right? And tell me again as a parent if you think I'm wrong. There are lots of times when that's a self-soothing tool and it's helping a child regulate. And maybe we might modify or adjust what a self-stimulatory looks like if it's hurting them. But there's nothing wrong with self-stimulatory behavior.
Well, this might sound weird, but I remember that you actually taught us that when Dylan gets home,
oh yeah,
like let him stem and let him have Dylan, like he learned, I feel like to self-control a lot. And when he was in certain settings, like if he's out in public or if he was at school, but when he came home, it's kind of like when we get home from work, right? We kick off our like work clothes, we get in our comfy clothes, we might get a glass of wine and we like unwind and chill.
yeah.
For Dylan, like if I let him stem, if he wanted to line something up, which when he was younger, or he had what we would call, remember, like his closet Elmos and stuff. So like, okay, when you go to school, like you have to have something a little more age appropriate, but when you come home, anything goes, man, get out all those, Sesame Street guys and, go to town. Right. But I think it's interesting because I think he's totally learned to do that.
Yeah.
And I know that some others like are resistant, and I get it. And I think that's just a lot of times our own problems as like families, because I think a lot of times people get embarrassed or they get worried about what others are going to think in public. But I think that was a really good tool for Dylan because I think it's helped him like regulate like when he needs to.
That's so funny. That's where my age is showing. I forget that. And as soon as you said it, I remember setting up that closet with you because he liked to bury in with all the stuff and have his guys and have his downtime, just like you said. And, as I think back over my career, I've more often than not suggested that to families. And you're right. I think it's that balance between families being a little bit embarrassed in public and children needing to know being allowed to self-soothe and how to shape that out in public and maybe inhibit when it's appropriate, but have that outlet and the scheduling of when that outlet's going to come. Just like you said, I totally come home. Well, I'm always home now, but when I'm done work, first thing I do is change, I start my day. I put on a top that looks professional, even though the bottom's not. Then I take it off and, put my hair up and have a glass of wine. It's the same thing. You're right.
Well, I remember too for Dylan, when he was young, like like you said, we call him the guys, right?
Yep.
He was super into figurines, but one of his biggest things are like animals, and it evolved through the years where it's been less. Where there's times where like he'd have to hold like 4 or 5, and they're pretty big, like the big like plasticky animals like that you would buy at the zoo or whatever. And that was the thing. But to me, I was like, dude, if he only has to hold like a couple of things and that is soothing to him and like that is a stem to him and that gets him through it, that's cool. And this is kind of funny, but it just reminds me of something that and he doesn't do stuff like that now. But I remember for graduation from high school, he took with him, and no one knew. It was in a couple of pictures, but he's obsessed with Woody from Toy Story, and he has this Woody figurine thing, but it looks almost like a bath toy. And he really wanted to like hold that and like take Woody with him. And I was like, dude, this is a 2-hour ceremony. And if that's what it's going to get him through it, like I'm totally for it. So I just think, we need to know the time and place for stuff. But I think it depends on what it is. Obviously, if like a kid's banging their head against the wall, that's like if it's something that's self-injurious or is really going to be an
Exactly.
issue,
Exactly.
like obviously maybe find some sort of replacement. But I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. I think I stem now.
I know I do. And I think it speaks to, sometimes I think that it speaks a little bit to the severity of autism.
Mhm.
And if you think about the mom we had on our podcast last year, who was willing to talk about her son, but didn't want any information shared, and
Yeah.
how he just graduated college. He
Mhm.
graduated in 3 years. He's quite bright. And I know in his younger years, he did a lot of self-stimulatory behavior that they wanted to extinguish. And that is behavior analyst is the word, like they want it to go away.
Mhm.
And I think you said it, there's a ways to sort of shape that behavior where a child can still have that exact need met, but fit an environment that fits for that family's values and culture. And I can vividly remember actually putting things in his pocket, taking a ribbon with some beads and Velcro that his mom would clip into his pocket. And he would use that when and he used it all the time. And he also in his other pocket had a rock that he would use. And there was nothing wrong with that, right? And when he got home, she did the same thing. He'd have his downtime. And I remember he would pace and just download his day verbally and repeat every single thing that happened in his day. And that was his time. And so it's about scheduling it and shaping it that meets. And that goes to our principle, our core principles in our new ethics code. Number 2, it treats others with compassion, dignity, and respect, which gives our second code word, which is dignity. And then it also, in our core values, it talks about we behave with integrity as behavior analysts, but we also ensure competence. And newer behavior analysts might not know to do that, right? They might still be, because as behavior analysts, we're often taught to decrease challenging behaviors. And challenging behavior is often self-stimulatory behavior for some families, and increase replacement behaviors. But the replacement behavior can still be an alternate self-stimulatory behavior,
Yeah,
right?
sure. And when you say dignity and compassion, it kind of reminds me of something that, um, like kid, especially we've been in the same neighborhood for like 13 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of little kids that, who start out, really young, and they're getting older now, like we all are. But I always remember that little kids around here love Dylan, and they love it when he's like cruising around the neighborhood. And it would be considered a STEM. Like he does this thing where he like walks and he likes to clap his hands, but he's like very bendy. So he can like he can start with them out front, but do it all the way in the back. And somehow I can't do it.
Like Stretch Armstrong, front,
Yeah,
back.
exactly. And he walks around and he does this like repetitive thing. But I remember that it's cute, and that toddlers and like younger kids would start following him like Pied Piper and do it behind him, and they just thought he was funny and like the coolest thing ever. And like the parents are super cool with it. So to me, it like that starts the values like for all of us, like whether you're, a BCBA or, a parent or a student or a friend or a neighbor, like to like just be cool and like accept people for who they are. So there are obviously there are some stems that are a little difficult to handle, but I guess it's always like everything else, pick and choose your battles, right?
Yeah. And I can just picture Dylan walking around, cruising around your neighborhood doing it, and with kids following him and him giggling and cracking
Oh
up.
yeah, he loves it. He's like, I got everybody to conform.
And So one thing that's cool about you is you're like, cool, he is who he is, right?
Mhm.
But that's part of all of this podcast is we're trying to meet the need for families so they can hear others' perspective, but also as new BCBAs, one of our core competencies in this new code is ensure competence. And
Mhm.
how else are we going to ensure competence if you don't listen and learn
Mhm.
from other people's perspectives?
Yeah,
Can
absolutely. I
you
think that's like anybody in any job or any like situation in their life. Like you don't know everything just out of the gates. And a lot of stuff, believe me, through the years, even working with Dylan in like a million different therapies, like I look back and I'm like, oh, like some of the stuff I used to do, like,
Yeah,
but that's first of all, and that's probably what, they're being taught, the service providers. Or just like think they're doing the right thing, but I think it's always like that.
yeah,
Or just like once you think you have something down, like something else comes up. I mean, I think it's a lot of it's trial and error, but you can't beat yourself up about it either. Like in the end you're trying to do your best, and but I do think it's good to kind of watch other people and then ask a lot of questions, especially of the families.
yeah. And I think that, at least I think, from what I've researched and read, those folks against ABA is they're reflecting back on that very rigid,
Mhm.
only discrete trial kind of thing and the extinguishing of all these behaviors versus what we've described, which is, find alternate ways, allow kids to do it when they want to, and then
Mhm.
encourage things like you did in the neighborhood, which was
Mhm.
that was made him happy and the other kids loved it. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
right? Is there ever a time that you can think of, and don't tell the people or anything, but a time when you had a therapist that didn't treat Dylan with compassion and dignity, and what that looked like?
Yeah, there's definitely and I'm definitely quick on it. I mean, I gotta say Dylan's been with a million people, and
Yeah,
a lot of them continue to be in our lives even though they don't work with him now.
yeah,
And we've been very fortunate, but there's been a couple of situations where I wish I would have. There's one situation in particular where I wish I would have like gone with my gut and kind of like said something sooner, and I was just trying to go with the flow. But I just don't think it was a good fit, and I think the person maybe thought they were doing the right thing, but he definitely would. Even though Dylan has a huge bill, I thought he was too physical with him, and
yeah,
like I don't think he was doing the right proper like subtle restraints, or and he would start, and again it sounds worse than it is because I know he bruises like to the touch, but you
yeah,
come home with a couple of bruises just in areas where I'm like, I wasn't like, oh, he's doing something to him wrong, but he would just obviously if he did held him certain ways, like
yeah,
he wouldn't be coming home with like almost like the arm grab bruises, and
yeah,
just after a while I'm just like, this is not gonna work, and like, so I mean, I don't know if to say the guy was just a bad person, but I wouldn't treat somebody like that, and I that was one time that I felt like it was just a really bad match.
yeah. And it's hard, I think, for parents. Like, I think your comment about going with your gut was a good one,
Mhm.
and how long you wait, because I know a lot of parents that have told me they let therapists continue with their child even though they knew it wasn't right
Mhm.
because they thought that person was an expert.
Mhm.
And we all joke like the parents are the expert of the child. As behavior analysts, we're experts in strategies and
Mhm.
tools, but we have lots of tools in our toolbox. And I know I continuously go around, and we did an episode on this last season about how extinction in general does not work for families, and there are other
Mhm.
tools in our toolbox. So how would you encourage or empower parents to know when to go with their gut and to how long to wait, because sometimes they don't want to lose a service.
Yeah, well, that's what I think is hard, because they'll be like, you feel like you're in a corner where like this person was considered supposed to be the, one of the best ones.
Yeah. Yep. And
And I'm
train.
like, okay. I think you have to really know your kid and what style of both, the provider, but also the personality. Dylan does not react well to people that are like cut and dry and I guess very authoritative, like,
Yeah.
and just I don't want to say militant. I'm not sure what the term is, but like Dylan doesn't react well to that. And if you're in his face, like it's gonna backfire. And so now, I mean, now I'm completely different. This is like he was real probably in like, I don't know, but at that time, probably I'm thinking second, third grade. And now he's 21. And now I'm just like, if right away, if I'm not feeling it, I just say, you know what, I think we need to switch things up because once the longer you go through this, like I think the more reliant you are on your gut, and like you don't want to waste your time or anybody else's time when you don't feel like it's happening. And Dylan's a good judge of character too.
He is. He's learned how to figure out who's
And
what's
he
what.
will like right away, like if he doesn't feel it, and that includes like just people in our lives, he'll like show you the door, like, and be like, go away. So but I've been, very fortunate that there have been a lot of great people, but again, if you're not feeling it, you shouldn't feel, I used to feel bad about it too,
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
not like, sometimes it wasn't like, oh, this person's like, too hardcore or just, like sometimes it just, my gut was like, this just isn't going to fly. It's not going to work. And it wasn't anything about the person. It
Yeah.
just wasn't a right match. So I think you just need to be vocal. You can't be worried about, you shouldn't be worried about like, oh, you're going to lose a service. Cause like, obviously you have rights and, none of us can live that way with anything in our life. So
Yeah.
you got to be an advocate. That's what I learned from day one. And you taught me a lot of that is like, in the end, you got to like be your kid's biggest advocate and you got to learn as much as you can. And I think too, going with the flow and switching things up, like not just people, but I learned that through the years that, to switch up different services and how we did them and things
Yeah.
like that. And, over time, like, what's the focus right now? Like,
Yeah.
so.
And I think I notice as families as their children get older and they're more accustomed to, one, my child has autism, and two, I'm navigating this therapy field, that they gain more confidence in trusting their gut. And then, our core principles talk about behave with integrity, and behavior analysts, we need to constantly gauge our competence level, ensuring that we're competent at what we're doing, and integrity. And if it's not a good match, that's okay. Right. Like there have been some families I've not jived with, and that's just the way it was. And that's all okay. And it's being able to be open with each other and have those conversations is super important.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that has a lot to do, again, I'm repeating, but the disseminating of ABA and the complaints. I think these new code of ethics will help balance that a lot. I think when people listen to people that have been through this, like you, and people that have been through it like me, that they can start to understand that like as our field evolves, we are in fact doing only things that benefit others, treating people with, compassion, dignity, respect, and integrity, and ensuring that we're competent in what we're doing. And that involves making sure children and families are happy themselves, that we're meeting your values and where they're at.
No, I mean, I love that. I think that, those four should actually be across the board.
Yeah.
For like all aspects of our kids with autism, like whether it's your medical provider or any different service or the school system, I mean, and just, your community, friends
Yeah.
and family. I mean, I think you could take those principles to any area really. And I think we should all abide by them for not just our loved ones with autism, but for everybody,
Yeah.
honestly, especially in today's world.
Exactly. God. Well, we have for season 2, we have some cool topics coming up as a little preview for people. We are going to spend the next 2 weeks talking again about managing fire safety for families and the role of ABA providers in that, as we're coming up on the anniversary of Feda and Moo's death. When she went into the house to save her son and wasn't able to, and they perished in the fire. We're both going to be involved in the September 26th project, which helps parents get ready for making sure their house is secure and safe. And Jen, you and I are going to walk through these checklists that have been developed, but other cool topics. One, we've got to spend time talking about your transition program and your IEP because it's getting all screwed up. And let's help people. We'll figure out why Dylan has a shared aid, which he's not supposed to have. He's supposed to have his own aid, but there's one aid for 3 kids, which is unsafe. We're going to talk about navigating adult programs as Dylan is going to graduate from his transition program and go to an adult program. We're going to go back into the holidays. We're going to talk about more about sensory issues. We're going to bring back an OT to talk with us, and we're going to bring back some old faces and hear how they're doing. So this is going to be a fun season 2, where we've got better microphones. People get to have CEUs as a B-Space through Site Pro, and we're getting noticed. So I'm so excited for season 2.
I am too. I'm thrilled. I actually missed it this summer, so I'm ready.
Me too. Our third code word is respect. And on that note, we're going to close out our podcast for today. We'll see you all. No, you'll hear us all next week. Bye.
Bye.